Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 22nd, 2022 work session of the Salisbury City Council. We have a brief agenda tonight, and we'll start off with Chief Barbara Duncan, and it's the red light camera program. Chief, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much. We started to consider seriously the red light cameras in light of our experience with the speed camera program. I know that years ago here in the city of Salisbury, prior to my arrival, we had red light cameras and they were not as effective or efficient as had hoped. There was, in speaking with my predecessor years ago about it, I remember a lot of concern about the technology itself was one of the main reasons why we had stopped participating in that program. In taking a look at some of the locations where they're more prone than others to crashes, also in taking a look at kind of gridlock situations, we believe that, especially in light of the fact that the technology has improved substantially over the years, we think that red light cameras should be a consideration for the city. We recently collaborated with our director of purchasing, who did a lot of legwork and research on the different programs here in the state. One particular program, which seems to be very, very successful, is operated out of Howard County. And that is the program that we submitted for your consideration. Essentially, Howard County has contracted their red light camera program with a company called Vera Mobility. They actually are operating under the label American Traffic Solutions. The contract that Howard County has with Vera Mobility has also been extended to 11 different jurisdictions in the surrounding area over on the Western Shore. If we believe that this program would be suitable for the city of Salisbury, ours would be the first one here on the Eastern Shore to connect with and partner with Howard County. We do have a different option, and that would be to put out requests for proposals. However, after, like I said, a lot of research on Jen Miller's part, we think that this is the most effective process forward. Essentially, what would happen with this particular program through Howard County is that Howard County would operate the program for us. In other words, it would be Vera Mobility or American Traffic Solutions would apply some of their employees to Howard County. Howard County has direct oversight and authority over the program. They would verify any citations that we review and believe to be adequate. There's a secondary layer that happens, secondary review that happens through Howard County's employees to make sure that the citations are correct, that they are legible, and that they are in fact capturing a violation. The process would involve entering into a contract or piggybacking off of the existing Howard County contract, which I believe has 1 year left to go on it before they renegotiate their red light camera program. We would be able to piggyback off of their existing program. The big consideration that we really need to speak about, though, relates to cost. So each camera, because of all of the operational pieces, meaning Howard County's running and maintaining the process itself, each camera would cost approximately $2,450 to lease per month. So if we were to consider instituting a program and just take, for example, Route 50 and Mill Street. So you would want cameras in 4 separate locations. So we're talking about $2,450 per camera times 4 at that location. In looking at what we would be required to have come back. So in other words, the number of citations we would have to have sent out and then get paid on the other end coming back in, you're talking approximately 50 citations per month per camera. Now, Jen has had some detailed conversations with our counterparts over in Howard County. So she can explain more, what their findings are on how the violation process rolls out and whether or not they tend to get upside down on any of their cameras. They seem to be fairly satisfied with their returns on it. And certainly with them, as it would be with us, we're not looking to, this is not a money generating process, but rather increasing vehicular safety, extending the resources of our police department, and then doing both of those things while reducing negative contacts between, or negative friction points between our police officers and our community that we're trying to keep safe. So with that brief introduction, are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Yeah,
I might have-
I'll open the floor. Mir, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I guess so. I got a couple. I mean, it's so, we certainly understand that these shouldn't be money generating programs. And you can't place a value on life, especially in accident situations where it causes loss of life. So, but that aside, as far as like a revenue neutral program, which is more kind of like what we would want to go for, kind of takes it away because we got somebody else that's probably doing a markup to run the program for us. My one question I would have is, so if somebody challenges a ticket in court, is that cost for that person to come from Howard County to go to court, is that already covered in what we paid, or are we going to pay additional money for somebody to travel down here and go to court?
So great question. From my understanding and the discussions that Jen and I have had regarding this process, no one from Howard County would come here to go to court. Our officers, similar to what happens with our speed camera program, our officers here, we would designate an individual to go to court on this process. Remember, with the speed camera, with our speed camera program, it's not a criminal citation. It's more in the realm of administrative in nature. So therefore, certainly, we can't bring a camera in, but we can bring an individual in to attest to the process, their certificates, and that all of the rules and regulations were followed, and they can bring that forward into court to be to represent the process itself. Where the cost comes in for Howard County, aside from the monthly lease, there's a management fee that is charged. It's $165. There is a process fee per citation, which is $11. So those fees, in addition, Jen, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that $165 and the $11 fee, both of those are in addition to the $2,450 lease per camera per month. Is that correct?
Jen, we didn't hear you. I saw you say
Didn't hear
yes,
you.
but we didn't hear you say yes.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, so it would take quite a few tickets to make this even revenue neutral for us. How much is a ticket?
So each ticket is $75. And based on those calculations, we'd have to get $50, we'd have to get 50 tickets paid in order to maintain those fees per camera.
Because the only concern I have at court, because this is, having to go to court quite a bit for what I do, I see a lot of these cases, and if, you get the right attorney on a few of these, and they start asking the question to the officer or whoever's representing the city, well, did you process this ticket? And they said, no. Well, then how do you know that there's a lot of those questions about, if we start losing cases on tickets, that gets out pretty quick. Was the one concern I have on that side, if we're not handling the processing, because we currently process ourselves, we process the speed camera tickets in-house.
So we review them in-house, but they are in fact sent out by the company. So we definitely review them in-house, which would be the same or similar to what we're doing right now with the speed camera tickets. We would be reviewing that initial violation and then approving it to move forward. And then it goes through a secondary review when it gets to Howard County after we already say, yep, this is a violation.
Okay. So the other, and then I'll make this my last question on it. And I know that Jen's done the legwork and, looked at other situations. Is there a total like inclusive package for speed cameras and red light to have it all inclusive in one? Are those options out there? Is something that I would ask, on that. Would that be more cost effective if we did that?
That's one thing I did look at. First, I looked to see if there were any other cooperative contracts out there. And what I found is that there are, but the cost per camera, that leasing fee that Barb initially mentioned of $2,450 per month, skyrockets to a point where it's actually more expensive than the city paying this $2,450 per month plus a management fee plus a per citation fee. I can't speak to any results we may get back if the city would choose to do our own solicitation, put out our own request for proposals for this. I can't say what, we would get back as far as per camera lease fee. So that definitely is an option. I think one thing that makes this program attractive is it lessens the burden on the Salisbury Police Department for some of that administrative work.
Okay, thank you.
President.
Sorry about that. April?
What I wanted to ask, how many cameras are we estimating to be installed?
So we looked at, just to start getting some figures together, we looked at a number of 20 cameras throughout the entire city. So you're talking along the Route 50 and the Route 13 corridor, certainly College Avenue, Bigland Park Drive. These are all areas where we know that we have red light violators. We get constituent calls on them. We get traffic accidents that get reported in or around those intersections. And actually it's a good segue into a different part of the discussion for this, which is that every camera that goes onto some of these more critical areas along Route 50 and along 13 would ordinarily involve entering into a memorandum of understanding with the State Highway Administration as well. So that kind of complicates the workload a little bit when you start talking about that. But you know, you've got intersections along Route 13, such as up at Center Drive, up at the mall. Zion Road is another one. Isabella and 13, South and 13. These are all very difficult intersections that traditionally have a number of crashes on an annual basis. And
So-
all of those would require additional work to enter into an agreement with SHA.
So you answered my second question about going in the critical areas. And if we have at least 20 cameras at $2,450. And
49.
I've got the numbers. I'll go over the numbers that I have when we get done.
when you get to you.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking, it sounds to be a good program, but my only thing is I'm kind of like Mir, is this gonna be worth it? Is it gonna be
Right.
cost effective? You know, I mean, are we, it's not like we're, like I said, like Mir said, we're not benefiting from it, but we want to make sure that our motors are safe, and I respect that, but are we going to benefit from this as far as finances are concerned, as far as the city having to, you know, put this money out here? How is it going to benefit us?
Yeah, and it's a great point. And we just used, we used 20 as a jumping off point for the investigative purposes of this presentation. So Jen, I don't know, maybe you have the answer to this, but was there a minimum number of cameras that we are required for the program?
My understanding, no.
So we just looked at our most critical areas and based it off of, it would be ideal if we could support having red light cameras, that it would change motorist behavior at those intersections for sure. But that it is a at $24.50 per camera per lease, that is quite the steep hill to climb. And certainly we don't need to have 20 cameras.
Well, as
That's what we
Jen,
used to-
was it, as Jen said, could we bid this out, Jen?
Yes, we absolutely could.
At least bid it out before we make this commitment. I would think that would be the most appropriate thing, because some agency may have it where it's not as expensive.
So there aren't too many players in this market right now,
Okay.
to be honest. There's been a lot of market consolidation, the larger vendors buying up the smaller vendors merging. So you're really left with just a handful of players. If memory serves me correctly, a cooperative contract that I looked at to get we'll say comparative pricing information, okay? Now, you would think with a cooperative contract, you're trying to capture those economies of scale, all right? You have more people that would want to piggyback on that contract. So you would hope that the vendor would be offering sort of their best pricing. I want to say I got pricing of about $3,800 per camera per month for a legitimate cooperative contract. So when you look at that versus the $24.50 per month and $165 management fee, I mean, that other option would almost could completely blow it out of the water. So yes, we could certainly bid it. I have no idea where a vendor may fall in terms of pricing. We certainly would want to lease the equipment, not purchase the equipment due to the change in technology.
I'm just, I think sometimes when we do things competitively, people tend to they want to be a part of this, and maybe the prices will go down, but that's just my spin on it. I don't know how everybody else feels.
Sure. One would
Thank
always
you.
hope that. Absolutely. And that's why we do that. That's why we have the competitive bidding process. Just to give you an idea, I know Barb mentioned this earlier. I think there are 11 other jurisdictions that participate in the Howard County program. Some of them have as few as 2 cameras. Some have, actually a lot have 2, 3, even 4. There's only 2 places. Charles County has 21 cameras. Howard County has 26, but the other 9 have 2, 3, and 4. What's this? I thought somebody else was talking or asking a question. So,
Go ahead.
to get in on something where, we may only be looking to commit to 2 cameras. I mean, we can certainly bid it out, but I really don't think that anybody's going to come with their best offer.
Thank you, Jen. Mr. Mayor, you have a comment?
Mr. President, thank you. Yeah, just two things to take some of the guesswork out of this. What we might want to do is look at the Howard County and was it Charles County? Is that what you said, Jennifer? Look at those 2 scenarios and look at what their revenue versus expenses are. I don't know. I haven't looked at it. My guess is they make a lot of money off of this. Now, when I say a lot of money, I think what we all can recognize is that for any of these camera programs, there are going to be rapidly diminishing returns. So, they were likely covering their costs and then some. But I think we should look at that because we could say those are 2 comparable regions and compare on that basis. The other thing I want to point out is on court costs and court. The memo from staff makes clear that we could take the guesswork out of this as well. 99.5% of red light camera tickets do not go to court. 99.5%. There's no guesswork there. The burden is obviously light. The evidence produced by the camera makes it tough for the driver running that red light to argue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Angela?
So this is a totally different camera system than what's already in place by a lot of it's a totally different thing. One is for speed in like crosswalk sections or something, or by schools. And this is just by like red light areas along the highway or streets. Do we have any information on the areas around Salisbury that were redesigned for Impact Zero? How many crashes were prior to, or how many traffic problems there were prior to putting those in versus after? And do we have any information on how many traffic stops we've had, say along the places we're proposing to put the lights before let's say we put the lights up? What are the statistical analysis even before we put the cameras up? I mean, before we put the cameras up. I just want to hear what that looks like.
Mr. President, I can take a stab at that. So on Vision Zero, the unfortunate thing is we can only apply that to our streets. And most of the fatalities and serious injuries that we have in the city of Salisbury of our residents and our visitors are on state highways. So while we can reduce those crashes through some enforcement, but also design changes, which are the most effective thing that we can do on our streets, we can't redesign state highways without the state being with us. Now, I think we should continue to pressure them to redesign their highways. But while we're waiting, enforcement is a pretty good tool. And we do want to minimize negative police interactions. And we also want to minimize the burden on officer time, running traffic so that they can, be in our neighborhoods and keeping us safe and building relationships and trust and things like that. So that's where the cameras provide a real advantage from my vantage point. But yeah, the Vision Zero report, the annual report that Will White now produces, which is on the city website, does have some analysis of crashes pre and post, or what the most significant injury incidents and deaths were from accidents and where they are plotted on a map.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Angela. Michelle?
So the vendor is going to be responsible for the maintenance of this, or is the city?
The vendor is
making sure-
responsible. Yeah, the vendor is responsible for the maintenance of the cameras.
Okay. And there won't be any like additional charge if there's a problem with it? Will they charge us if they have to come fix one or replace a unit or something like that? No, okay.
Because we would be
And-
leasing them.
Gotcha. Okay. That was something that I was just wondering about with the cost of all of it. And when I'm not quite sure the question I want to ask, but I'm just concerned about the calibration and making sure they're working properly. Are they going to be tested prior to? I'm assuming they're going to be tested before they put them into use as far as timing and that sort of thing.
You
Yes.
can only say, I would assume so.
I would assume so. I wasn't sure. I'm just worried about the technical side of things. Like
Right.
costs and all of that is great. I want to make sure that this equipment is reliable and working properly. And not only are we getting our money's worth, but people are getting the people that need the tickets are getting them, and the people that aren't are not. So that's just the only concern I have. So
Right, and it's well placed. With our speed camera program, we actually receive a certificate, and that's
Okay,
done on
good.
an annual basis because the
Okay,
company
good.
stands behind it. So based on that experience and based on the fact that that Vera Mobility seems to have a lot of space within the market, I don't think it would be out of the question to request and have a certificate produced for our files. Typically, that's what's required for court purposes as well.
yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is that something that we need to consider for court cases and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, that was it.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, I've always been accused of being a numbers guy, but let me first say that the Zero program is excellent. We should do whatever we can do to get there. However, I have concerns that the other council people have, but I want to make sure that I'm understanding it completely. So Jen, if you can check me, because I was doing these as we were going through this. Let's
Now
take
you
the
have
chief.
you have to base this on the same data that I already did. 20 cameras.
No, let me just go through and the Mill Street example. The Mill Street example is 4 cameras will be needed. That means to break even, we need 200. 50 is the break even point per citation. So that means we need 200 citations a month just to break even on that piece of it. However, there's also, because the cameras are $25.50, $24.50, there's a service charge of $165, which brings it to $36.15. So for Mill Street, the Mill Street cameras will cost us $14,460 for that one site. And then, like I said, you'll need 200, and there's another $2,200 for their citation fee that goes on top of that for the 50 for each camera. So this is a big number, okay? What I would like to see done before we even go any further would be, and my suggestion would be, that we get a break-even analysis done by Keith. You know, I just think we need to know that. And because I even forgot until the chief said it, it's not one camera per site. It's 4 cameras at an intersection. And that's assuming the fact that we can get the state to go along with it. So, because we just said that most of these things are on state roads where the biggest problems are. And I would have thought that, and that doesn't surprise me. So I appreciate the desire to reduce accidents and injuries and God forbid deaths, but I'm also realistic in the fact that it's got to be something that makes sense for our people. And so if we could do that, that would be my recommendation. I'd like to hear what the rest of the council thinks about that. Mir?
Yeah, I would have to see, like you said, the cost breakdown, because one intersection with the fees, the extra fee is going to be $41,840 a month. Do we think that we can generate that much money per month to maintain the program? If we do half, you know, it's in the whole $20,000 a month. And this is something that could, you know, quickly you're talking, you know, an extra couple $100,000 a year where we're not, that we could be losing out on revenue. So that's something seeing the breakdown and the cost is going to be key for this, to see if we can maintain it.
Well, I just want to make sure, I didn't get 40,000. I got 14,460.
I'm sorry, 14,000. I'm sorry.
14,460 plus the 2,200 in fees per citation, if we get that. So it's a big number. Jen, does that make sense what I said?
Yeah, so you're pretty much between 40 and 50 citations that would have to be paid, 40 to 50 citations per camera per month.
Right.
And it's somewhere between that range. It doesn't matter if you're looking at 4 cameras. It doesn't matter if you're looking at 20 cameras. Does that make sense? If you think of it on a per camera basis.
You're still paying that on a per camera basis. So you need 50 citations per camera.
40 to 50 per camera per month.
Right, that's where I got the 2,200 from.
But the
So
$2,200.
it's $11. It's $11. The fee is $11 per citation.
Correct.
So that's 2,200 on top of the thing, right?
Top of the $9,800 for the lease fee for 4 cameras, plus your management fee of, we'll say $165 times 4 cameras, that's $660. So
Right.
if you add the $9,800, the $660, and the $2,200, you're at $12,660 in expenses. Based on 50 paid citations, that revenue, 50 citations, works out to be about, you know, at $75 each. And that's per camera, not total over 4 cameras, 15,000 in revenue. So you're to the positive about $2,300. So again, you know,
I
you're
agree with
between
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. But
Okay.
what you're asking is that each camera in Mill Street has to
Yes.
do 50 citations.
Yeah.
And do we get 200? Do we get 200 violations a month at Mill Street? Is my point. I don't know. Maybe it's 300. But I just would like to know what the break even is on this. Angela, you have your hand raised, I think. Mayor, do you have yours up again too? Your hand raised? All right, let's let Angela go first and then we'll go to the mayor.
I still, this goes back into some numbers too. I still would like to have an idea of how many red light tickets have been written, just say in the past year, in our proposed areas. And just looking at the data, I guess the officers take down with their stops. They've written 0. Okay, so, but what my issue is I wanted to get an idea of the prevalence and what kind of numbers we're looking at from us, what's driving us to install this now? Is it numbers? Is it people? How many people are doing the red light drive-throughs? And to really get an idea of like the volume. And then if we do go through with this and we end up getting the state's permission, can we use that traffic data then to put it maybe on the cameras or the intersections that are the most prevalent, that seem to be the most ticketed, or the area where people are flying through the red lights?
I think it's going to be hard to do that, Angela. And if I can jump in for the chief, they don't catch. I mean, if they're not there and they don't see it, it's not recorded. So you don't know how many were done without any. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen Mill Street and people go shooting through, especially making left-hand turns after the signal.
Right.
The signal goes.
Right.
So we know that happens. It's hard to do that because you're not going to see a representative ticket associated with that. So I understand that side of it. I'm just saying, do we get that kind of volume, 200 going through Mill Street to pay for those cameras? That's just a.
Chief, the company does help us with an evaluation, or is that all on us?
Right. So, and that's a good point. They will conduct a study. Jen, you have more information about that as to the timing of the study, when that would happen?
I don't, other than to say it would only happen after we contract with them. Before we would contract with them.
Yeah, so it's in their best interest as well to make sure that we're putting these in locations that make sense, and that we will curb behavior, but also have a continued income source as well to make this at least revenue neutral. And that's all we're looking for. We wouldn't enter into locations where this wouldn't make sense.
Right.
Because then, we don't have violators there to try to curb their behavior as well.
Well, based on 20 cameras, we're only going to get 4 locations, right?
Right. So, and we don't
5
have to
locations.
do,
I'm sorry.
we
5
wouldn't,
locations.
we wouldn't have to necessarily we don't have to commit to 5 separate locations. We could take a look at our crash data and determine the best location, and then evaluate from there to see if it's worth the return on the investment to push further into that envelope and consider other intersections.
I would feel more comfortable if we did that.
Sure.
Personally, because if it's justifiable and we can do that through data, I'm fine with that. I'm more than happy to look at that again. But I just think going in with this thing the way we are, I'll be frank, I'm not comfortable with it. And I'd like to see, and the other council people, when they spoke, essentially said the same thing. They want to do it, but we want to see if why we're going to do it is backed up by data.
Right. And quite frankly, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
No, that's all right. I was going to call on April.
So we get questions like that all the time about, where are your officers? Why aren't you enforcing the red lights? Why do we keep having the crashes? So it kind of begged the question, well, why don't we have a system here? What are some of the considerations? Certainly, we've gotten away from the issues with the technology of it not being where it needed to be to properly calculate a violation and then capture it. Certainly, we've gotten away from the problem of producing great images of the violation because of the quality of the cameras now. And the only other issue that we have is how far are we willing to extend ourselves financially in order to cover the city properly? And, I don't think that anybody had this great understanding of the sheer cost per camera for a a valid and certifiable process, which is really what we need for sure, you know? So we can start by investigating that intersection in our city with the most crashes. We can also start with 2 cameras to make it manageable. And then Jen and I would rely on you to determine length of contract. But to Ms. Jackson's point, you know, there may be an additional step that we need to go through in order to make sure that we have the most sustainable program for the city's finances.
April, you had a comment.
Yeah, now I'm not totally against it. We do need more information on this. I do know for myself that Delaware Avenue and 50 is a hazard. I know that for myself, because if I were a person that just pulled out into traffic, I would have been killed several times on hand. So I'm seeing where this is needed. It is a needed thing, because I'm gonna tell you, that traffic is crazy on Delaware Avenue and 50. It is really right in front of the police station. They don't care. But we need more information, Chief. If you and Jen could get us some more information, so it could be concrete and we would know what we're actually dealing with, and we're not spending money that we could be using somewhere else. That's all.
April. Mr. Mayor, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, if I may, a couple things. One, I want to just address the point about how we're going about this, and that this is an item being brought to you for discussion. So we don't have a way of going about this yet. So just to be clear, you know, we aren't sure exactly how to proceed. It seems that there's a best procurement path forward, but that doesn't mean that you know, we have to follow that route. But I think the big question that we've got to ask ourselves is, you know, even on roads that aren't our responsibility, you know, it's our citizens there every day, and it's their lives at risk. And so what can we do, and what are we going to do to try to keep them safe? And so in getting to that, and I want to get to that in a second, there's just 2 other side points that I'd make. One, I think we ought to look at the 6 cameras we have now and what they cost us. Each costs us at least $35,000 a year in fees. They cost us a fortune to manage, and that price keeps going up. You know, revenue is declining, and the fees are rising, and that's just the way these programs are designed to work, so that they can maximize profit over time. The company can maximize their profit. We don't, you know, we lose profit, which is fine, because we're not doing it for profit's sake. But I think it's worth pointing out that it's not as if these speed cameras that we currently have are free to operate. They're quite costly. In addition to that, what I'd point out is that I've talked to a couple of these companies over the years and never heard of a scenario where a municipality lost money, where there was an actual realized net loss. I've never heard of that. So I think it's worth us investigating whether or not that's a reality that other places have experienced, or B, whether that's even possible given the contractual relationship. Now, I don't know if other contracts state that we can't experience a net loss. I don't know if we could put that clause in a contract. I don't know if that's legal or possible. But you know, we're obviously willing, I think everybody's willing to experience some cost in order to save lives. What that number is, whether it's 0 or some other number, I don't know. But if I can, is it possible for me to just share my screen real quick? Is that something I can do, Julia?
Gave you a thumbs up, so.
She did? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay, just real quick. This is the Vision Zero City website. So this does not include state highways. This is only city streets, but it gives you a sense of just how bad the worst streets are. I mean, in there you see Delaware Avenue, You see Truett Street. You see Zion Road. You see
Taylor Street.
Naylor Mill there. Is a bad one. Just scrolling through Naylor Street. Is that Brown? You've got Isabella, Riverside Drive, Mill Street, Carroll Street, a really bad one. Waverly, Eastern Shore Drive. And obviously Waverly has changed. We've redesigned that, but most of these others we haven't done much work on yet. So other than correcting the design at Waverly and Fitzwater, Waverly and Fitzwater have been speeds reduced and redesigned. But some of these others like Carroll, are in desperate need of some attention. And you can also see, if you scroll down, the high injury intersections. So Mill and Main. Historically, before obviously this is predating the circle, but Mill, Riverside, Carroll, Eastern Shore and Carroll, Eastern Shore and College, Naylor Mill and Northgate, Eastern Shore Drive and Washington Street. So some really bad ones in there. I just thought it was worth sharing that.
Yeah.
And you can find that through the DID page on the city website. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. It's helpful. Jen, did I not also hear you say that they're coming up for a contract renewal?
That's correct. So Howard County.
When is that?
Yeah, the current contract with Vera Mobility expires at the end of 2023.
2023. Oh, darn. That's one thing you want to watch out for, getting in if it was like this year. It's one of those anticipative increases in price before you get you in on the lower fee, and then all of a sudden the cameras are in and the fee goes up. Yeah. So okay, so that's not gonna. Well, that blew that deal. I was thinking we could wait until, but we can't wait. So if we could do the things we talked about, that would be very helpful, I think. And then when we're ready to discuss it, bring it back again and let's look at it. I think we have consensus. I see nodding going on. Yes, we have consensus from the council. So if we can get some of those things done and come back again, I think we'll be in a better position. So thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your consideration and discussion. We'll definitely start to move this forward and then we'll be back.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
Sure thing.
Thank you, everyone, for your input. Appreciate it. Okay. I said it was a brief agenda. I was wrong. Okay. Let's go on to the next item, which is Ann Street Pallet Shelter Project, Department of Infrastructure and Development Director Amanda Pollack, and Department of Housing and Community Development, Ron Strickler. You have the floor. Be my guest.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We will talk really, really fast. No, just kidding.
Don't worry about it.
I know. We are here tonight to talk about the Ann Street Village project. We've been progressing and moving along very nicely with the design. And throughout design, we've identified some enabling legislation to help move this project forward. So there are three things we're presenting tonight, one of which needs to go to Planning Commission first, and the other two, if you so choose to move forward with them, could go to your next legislative agenda. So I'll explain all three of those, and Ron and Christine are both on tonight to be able to help answer any questions. So the first item is an ordinance for a text amendment to the zoning code. This is something we are actually planning to do with the zoning code comprehensive rewrite, but the Ann Street Village project has kind of accelerated the need for this amendment. And that is in the method of regulation section of the zoning code, exempting federal, state, and local governments from the zoning code. This is actually pretty common, and we are modeling language that Wicomico County has. And this helps clarify some confusing language in the existing code, and also will help this project comply with the zoning code. So this item, because it is a text amendment in Title 17, the zoning code, this will need to go through Planning Commission and have a public hearing, and then come back to the City Council for a public hearing but we wanted to introduce it tonight with the other two items so that you see everything that we're proposing as far as this project goes. Should I address the other two and then open it to questions on everything? Is that probably best?
Yeah, why don't you do that? And then
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so the second item is an ordinance for a text amendment to the building code, which is in Title 13 Public Services. And Section 1316 of our code requires that all buildings and structures used for human habitation must have interior sanitary facilities. Because this village has a central restroom, each unit does not have central sanitary facilities. So what we're proposing is an exemption for facilities owned or operated by the city of Salisbury for the purpose of providing temporary housing for homeless persons. So we've made a very narrow definition here so that people cannot start renting out their sheds as apartments. We wanted to keep this very, very narrow and very tight to the purpose. And so that is what we are proposing here. So again, that one does not need to go through Planning Commission. That could be something you can address at your next meeting. And then finally, you have before you a resolution that authorizes the establishment of this temporary housing facility. And while we've been working with CBM on this legislation, they had found this in another neighborhood. And we thought that this was a very helpful resolution because it really defines, why do we need this facility? What are the services provided? What are the shared facilities provided? And then it authorizes the city administration to develop eligibility criteria, a selection process, and rules and regulations for this village. So we think this is a really important resolution to set the structure of the Ann Street Village. So that is the third legislative item before you tonight. So
Okay.
If you have any questions.
Thank you. We'll go through the council comments. Mr. Boda?
No questions, and I'm in favor of these.
Okay. Ms. Jackson?
Well, I have some concerns because I wasn't under the impression that this is a part of the tiny homes. Am I right?
Yes.
I wasn't under the impression that they were going in Ann Street. I thought they were all going on Marine Road. And my question is, I know it doesn't matter. Both of these areas, well, then one of them is a high crime area, very high crime area. And why have we, I know the city owns this property, but how is it that we find ourselves putting these tiny homes in what I would say is a predominantly Black neighborhoods? I have a problem with that. I really have a problem with that. I really, really have a problem with that. It's not as so, I'm not saying these people, and believe me, I do support the tiny homes. I do support them, but these locations that they're being put in, to me, I'm not saying, well, yeah, I am saying, they're just not the kind of locations I think that they should go in. Now, that's me. I really don't think they should be in those locations. If we're trying to rehabilitate people and get them back on their feet, these are not the areas that they should be in. You also know there's crime. There's crime all through the city, but why is it that everything that has to do with the homeless has to be in our communities?
Well, I can answer part of that from my perspective. There are homeless camps within 800 yards of where we're talking about, by Route 50, by the bypass, by the overpasses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know where some of the other ones are, April.
Yeah, I do.
So we're limited to where they can go. But the other thing that I remember discussing was one of the things that we were talking about in my question for Marine Road is, how are the people going to get to the services they need? Well, here they can walk to the services they need, and they have the assistance that they need. So I think that's probably why they are where they are. I don't have any issues with where they are, but they
But
need to
Jack, of
get
course,
services.
I understand what you're saying, all of that. I understand all that. Of course, you wouldn't have a problem because they're not at your back door. They're not at your back door.
If we had city land, I wouldn't, but it's my place, it would not be the place to put it because I'm at the end of the city. But I wouldn't have any issue with it.
I don't have an issue with the actual tiny homes, period. I have a problem with some of the location that they're being put in. I do have a problem with that. I do. And I'm not going to say that I'm not going to vote yay or nay, because right now I'm in a point, and like I said, everything. I understand you talking about the location for them to get to the resource. I understand all of that. And don't think that I'm not being selfish. I'm just thinking on the better half of the people who also live in these communities. That's what I'm thinking about as well. Because at some point, and I know I've dealt with the homeless, not once, I've dealt with the homeless for years. Are there going to be pedophiles in these tiny homes? How are we going to do all this? It's a lot to have to, we have predators, it's a lot. It's just a lot to have to endure.
April, I don't mean to cut you off, but we we may have them roaming the streets right now.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Jack. But
we need to get them in a place where they can be observed, where they can get the help they need, and it's just got to get done. I mean, we agreed to doing it, and we said we're gonna put in tiny homes.
I never said that I didn't agree with the tiny homes. I never said that. I disagree with the locations. I really do. I do.
Yeah, and you have the right to do that, and you can vote your conscience.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mayor has his hand up. Mr. Mayor.
It's really easy for a group of 6, 10, 12 of us who have a roof over our heads to dehumanize and have a conversation about people who are fighting for their life every single night. And this is what happens in conversations about the homeless. They are treated as less than human. They are treated as if they don't matter. They don't deserve a shelter over their head. And this is what every conversation on this topic devolves into in every corner, even in churches in our community. Constantly, the homeless class is treated as if, again, they are not deserving of a life of dignity. And what I think we have to remember is that whether we turn our blind eye or whether we lend them that dignity by spending our resources and fighting for a shelter over their heads, that either way, the same individuals are a part of this community. They are hidden, they aren't seen, but they're here. Those human beings are on our streets every single night. And the only question is, are we going to house them or are we not? There are all sorts of detailed questions that come after that. And frequently, it comes down to sort of the NIMBYism of not in my backyard. And I understand that. But I think what we have to do is remain focused singularly on the critical question. And the only critical question is, are we going to do the humane thing and lend these people the dignity they deserve? Or are we going to allow them to continue to live and die on the streets of Salisbury, Maryland? That's the question before us.
I do have this to say, Jay. First of all, with a person who has worked with the homeless for many years in my church, I would never dehumanize any of them. Believe that. I have much compassion for the homeless. Even when it was done at the park, I was sick as a dog, but I was out there with the homeless. So don't make it look like that everybody is against this or it's not being against anything because I'm for it. I'm just not for the actual locations of where it's going. Don't get me wrong. They do need somewhere to go. They do need a roof over their head. They do need care. Don't think that I don't know that.
So
I've
if I
worked
can-
with it for over 12 years.
If I could point out one other thing, just in terms of this location. So not only is it close to many resources, we do have two other factors to consider related to crime and demographics. So if you look at this neighborhood, look at the racial demographics. We actually, it is no longer a majority African-American neighborhood. So it is now a majority Latino neighborhood. And the second largest population is the Haitian immigrant population. So the demographics have changed dramatically. And, we keep hearing that from Christian Shelter and Grace United Methodist Church and from Salisbury Urban Ministries, the organizations that serve over there. But then there's this other factor, and I can screen share again if you want me to, but if you pull up the crime map, this is one of the lowest crime neighborhoods in the city now. One of the lowest, not high, one of the lowest. So we can pull up the crime maps now. If I can screen share for a second, and this is the most updated. You can see where the crime is concentrated. You can see where all the Part 1 crimes are being committed. Now there is an area out to the west side near Marine Road that is fairly high, and that's Pemberton Apartments. But in this neighborhood, as you can see, this is a low crime neighborhood. And I know that it's had a bad reputation over the years, but that's clearly dramatically changing. And so I think when we're having a conversation about, demographics or crime, we have to look at the facts and we have to look at the data, even if it's different from how it's historically been, because you're right. I mean, we're talking about a historically African-American neighborhood. We're talking about a historically high crime neighborhood. We're still talking about a neighborhood with high poverty. That's a fact that we haven't changed. But it's also a community in transition, a neighborhood in transition. And believe me, that is an argument that some people are making against locating it there as well. But to me, this location and Marine Road both need to be built out. Marine Road is obviously more expensive, as we talked about at work session. It's going to take a lot longer. We have major water and sewer challenges there. It's going to be very difficult, but I still think ultimately it should be built out. And that while we need these temporary villages, they should exist wherever we can find space for them.
April, do you have any questions on the items that are listed in terms of the legislation or the sanitation?
No.
Okay. Angela?
I do have a few questions. Some of the discussion has helped with some of those questions. One of the things that I did not see in the packet is the I guess, little drawing or the little mock-up picture of the layout. Because I wonder if, I'm just curious to see how that would fit in to that area and how, and what section would you use for the communal areas, mainly the bathrooms, the showers and that. So I didn't, maybe it was just my packet. I didn't get one. I don't know. Sometimes it's user error. And I wanted to know what the specs, have they changed in regards to pricing? I know at one point I understood, and it could have been wrong, that they all were going to go over the Marine Road. And I think there was like a presentation that outlined the actual pricing. Has the pricing changed since the project's been split? Because I think the second phase now is going over Marine Road. And is that more costly to have it split? And where do those numbers lie?
So I'll start, and Ron may be able to jump in on this one. So we do have a preliminary site plan. It was not included in your package just because it wasn't going to be part of the ordinances, but we can certainly share that. There are going to be 25 units at the Ann Street Village, and that is what was approved at the award of bids, I believe at the last council meeting, but one of the last two council meetings. And all 25 will go to Ann Street. So we can fit all of those on that site. So the budget allocation that you all approved in December with the budget amendment will be used completely for Ann Street to build that site, to run the necessary electric, do stormwater management, put the base down for the units, and basically do everything we need to do to complete that site. And then Marine Road, I'm not sure, and this is where I'll defer to Ron, how many units and the timetable for that one.
Yes. So as far as Marine Road goes, our focus right now is certainly on the first phase of the project, Ann Street. We need to get that phase up and running and experience the Ann Street shelter and Ann Street Village and see how we operate there. And from that point, we know that the Marine Road site is far off with the annexation, the zoning requirements, the site work that would need to take place there. There were a lot of mitigating factors with Marine Road. I will take credit for the Marine Road site. I knew it was a city-owned property with a large plot of land. And as I was viewing the city, and Christine and I were discussing different options, that was obviously number one on our list. After meeting with Amanda and her team, discussing some of the force mains that run through there, the costs associated with getting water and sewer services, electrical services out to that site, requirements that come along with the annexation, and the timetable we were looking at, the immediate need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic. There really was no question about the Ann Street site once it became a possibility, with the services being right there that we need for the site. And the ease of the project, and knowing that we have the a minimal budget to work with, staying within those constraints, and being able to put out a product that we know will be successful. I don't know how far off we are from Marine Road. I would imagine it would be a year, few years down the line, as we experience Ann Street Village, and we find success there. Ultimately that's our goal, and we can expand from there.
How many units are going in on Ann Street?
It will be 20. There's 25 total units, but one will be utilized as kind of a service center office space for our HCDD team. Opportunity for the folks there to learn job skills, different types of things we'll have on site. It's going to be like a hub. It's going to be a little bit of hub. But Angela, just to speak a little bit to what you said about what the layout looks like. It's a village. I mean, they're essentially at one end of the site that you would enter, which is along Ann Street. The entire site will be enclosed with fencing, with the exception of the entrance itself, which will not be gated. It will be open. We want it to be a welcoming space. There will be a utility access gate at the rear. There will be a courtyard for activities. I saw the design today. I was excited about it late in the day. It's been a busy one, but we can definitely share that with you. It's exciting. I know Christine's on this call. She's probably very excited too. But yeah, it's going to be very nice once it's completed.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Could you please make sure that gets out to the council members?
Yes.
The drawing.
Yeah, I think we're determining the final approval with Vista. But yes, we can make sure we get that out.
Thank you, Ron.
If Mr. President,
yeah,
can I just add one thing to that? So, my statement that Marine Road is still an important piece. I mean, there's no funding for that yet. That's I don't want to say it's a pipe dream, but that is an additional endeavor. That would be doubling the size of what we have. But to remember that we have more than 70 chronically homeless people out there on the streets right now in our county. So the scale of the problem still exists. 25 isn't going to finish the job.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Angela, anything else? Okay. Michelle?
So as for the location and the venue change, if we want to call it that, this is in my backyard. This is in my district. This is 3 minutes drive, and it would be less than that if the State Highway Administration had not split Davis Street in half. It is a 10-minute walk from my house. I have zero problems with the location of this, because ultimately this is going to be helping people get back on their feet. Having experienced homelessness, having lived in a shelter, it is not ideal for a teen girl to be in that kind of situation. I can tell you right now, this is going to save lives. This is going to help people get back on their feet. And I am all for it. I am welcoming it into my backyard. I can't wait to see this get started. I would love to go see the site once you guys start setting it up. And let's get this done. It's high time.
Thank you, Michelle. Do you support the legislation that was presented?
Yes.
Okay, Angela, you do too? Yes. Okay, she said yes. Okay. Let me see. Are there any other comments? Mr. Mayor, you have your hand raised again.
Sorry, one other thing. Yeah, I do just want to address the concerns about the pedophiles or any type of convicted sex offender. No provided housing through any voucher system, any federal program, any other program whatsoever allows any type of sex offender ever to be housed anywhere in the United States of America. They aren't housed in our program. They aren't housed in our shelters. They aren't housed anywhere at all at any time, which makes life pretty difficult, but I think we can all agree they earned it. So I don't think, I think we should be clear just from the outset that the city actually has a slightly tighter rule. We don't, and Christine can correct me if I get this wrong, but I think we not only, we will not provide housing through our programs to any sex offender, but also no one convicted of any type of homicide and no one convicted of arson for obvious reasons. So I believe that those are the restrictions. Christine or Ron, feel free to correct me if I got that wrong.
So the only new restriction that there is now on the HUD standard is you cannot be convicted of producing methamphetamine. So that's in addition to those three that you just talked about. They have added that as a fourth restriction. So thankfully, none of my guys have been convicted of that. Producing methamphetamine takes pretty much a place. You have to have a place to live to do all that. So, but that is the only other restriction that's in place by HUD.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, I think that finishes the agenda items. I'll now ask for comments, final comments, or go to the order from the administration. Mr. Mayor?
Nothing else from me. I've talked enough tonight, but thank you all. I appreciate, we've still got some work to do, obviously, on red light cameras. And, we continue, obviously, to work on our housing initiatives. So we will report back as often as we can and forward the legislation that was supported tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I go to the council, Ms. Nichols, could you make sure that the things that were to move forward appear on the agendas, the appropriate agendas? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, comments for the good of the order from the council. Mr. Boda?
Happy 2/2/2/2 day. And this is also the week that if you do the date forward and backward, the number is the same. So happy palindrome week. So that's all I got.
It was amazing. Ms. Jackson?
Leave it to Mirror. Leave it to him. It's not much I really want to say tonight, but I just want everyone to be safe. Continue to keep yourself safe. And I've understood the numbers have gone down considerably for COVID, and that is a blessing. But the only way those numbers are going down is because we're doing what we're supposed to do. So continue to do the right thing, is wear your mask. If you, now that the law has said you don't have to, it's up to you. But if I were you, I would continue to wear my mask in places, businesses or whatever, but that's entirely up to you. But just be safe. That's all I ask you. Just be safe and keep others safe. Good night.
Thank you, April. Angela?
Well, as always, if you're healthy enough, please consider donating blood. We continue to be very, very short here on the peninsula, and many people need your gift of life. Thank you.
Sorry, Michelle, I was on mute and I was introducing you.
No problem. Don't have much, but I don't know if folks saw it this morning on the health department website, but there is a recall for certain formulas out there. So if you are a mama or a papa who is formula feeding, check the Wycomico County Health Department for the information on the recall.
Thank you. Yes, have a great week. The numbers, I just looked at them a couple minutes ago. Positivity rate was 5.23, which is pretty darn good. However, 2 of our citizens died. People are still dying. So please, if you can, please get vaccinated or boosted or both. We appreciate it. Have a great week, everyone. We will see you next Monday. We're back on our normal schedule. So have a great week, everyone. See you then. Thank you for your participation tonight. Appreciate it very much.